December 7, 1941. A quiet Sunday morning in the Pacific, but the world was already at war. For the United States, that morning irrevocably shifted everything. Seaman Ed Wenslaff, a young man from Minnesota, was serving aboard the USS Arizona. Born in 1917, Ed had enlisted in the U.S. Navy on December 8, 1937, a date that would take on grim significance 4 years later. He completed boot camp at Great Lakes Naval Training Station, then specialized at Naval Ordnance School in San Diego. By 1938, he was billeted aboard the battleship USS Arizona, initially working as a cook and pot scrubber, before joining the ordnance crew on the forward gun batteries. He was a qualified aviation ordnance mate first class. The Arizona's home port had shifted to Pearl Harbor, a move that placed him in the crosshairs of history. That morning, December 7, 1941, was to be Ed's last full day of enlistment. His service was scheduled to end the following day. He recalled his commanding officer, Rear Admiral Isaac Kidd, one of the orneriest admirals, on the quarterdeck. Most of the crew had taken cover below, but something compelled Ed to return to the quarterdeck. It likely saved his life. At 7:55 a.m. the attack began, a Japanese Zero Dove dropping a bomb through the upper decks of the Arizona, igniting the powder magazine. The explosion ripped through the ship. Ed quickly cut the mooring rope of the Admiral's barge with a flagstaff from the Admiral's cabin. He then spent hours ferrying survivors to the hospital ship, USS Solace. He witnessed Navy doctors, overwhelmed by the scale of devastation, bypassing fatally wounded sailors. Many senior officers, including Admiral Isaac Kidd, were killed in the blast. Later, Ed assisted on the USS West Virginia, attempting to prevent its capsizing. That night, issued a rifle, he hunkered down in a naval base recreation building. Amidst the chaos and fear, a tragic error occurred. American anti-aircraft fire, in the confusion of the attack's aftermath, shot down 5 American carrier-borne planes, killing 2 pilots. It was a grim testament to the breakdown of command and the sheer terror of that day. A day later, Ed scribbled a postcard home. "I am okay, and I will write later." He would remain on active duty for another 4.5 years, a profound testament to the altered trajectory of an ordinary life caught in the maelstrom of war. The attack on Pearl Harbor, initially underestimated by many Americans, forced the United States into a two-front war. The strategic priority became clear: Europe first. But the Pacific theater and its relentless demands could not be ignored. Even before Pearl Harbor, the meticulous skills of individuals were being directed toward national defense. Marty Romano, born in Jersey City in 1924, had grown up on tales of World War I, the decadence of the Roaring Twenties, and the hardships of the Great Depression. Of Italian-American descent, he was keenly aware of rising fascism in Europe. Before the war, Marty worked as a machinist's apprentice, tooling subcomponents for firearms with a precision of 1/10,000th of an inch. This rigorous precision, a defining trait of machinist trades, would directly contribute to the war effort. In the summer of 1943, Marty was inducted into the U.S. Navy, his specialized skills recognized with a rating of machinist's mate. After boot camp in Newport, Rhode Island, he volunteered for PT boat duty, a crucial but often overlooked aspect of naval warfare. PT boats, motor torpedo boats, were designed for agile, close-range combat, relying on stealth and speed. At the PT Training Center in Melville, Rhode Island, Marty learned the intricate mechanics of these vessels. Their power came from 3 Packard 3M 2500 engines, triple tandem, 12-cylinder, liquid-cooled powerhouses, capable of propelling the boats to over 45 knots. These engines were known gas hogs, consuming over 200 gallons per hour at 32 knots, requiring constant vigilance from a machinist's mate like Marty. Each PT boat carried 4 torpedoes as primary armament, supplemented by .50 caliber machine guns for anti-aircraft defense. In the spring of 1944, Marty graduated and boarded the USS Ranger, an aircraft carrier repurposed for troop transport, bound for Casablanca. His assignment was to Motor Torpedo Squadron 15, RON 15, stationed on La Maddalena off Sardinia. Soon after, he transferred to RON 22 in Bastia, Corsica, where he found his boat, PT 306, affectionately nicknamed the Fascinating Bitch, Throughout May and June of 1944, Marty completed his first combat missions aboard PT-306, patrolling the Ligurian Sea. These missions varied widely from interdicting enemy supply lines and conducting reconnaissance to ferrying spies and supporting amphibious landings. It was a demanding operational environment where reliance on stealth and speed created inherent risks for the crew. The constant threat of enemy action was ever present, from German E-boats and Italian MAS boats to the terrifying prospect of friendly fire. In June of 1944, the Allied corps reached a watershed moment with Operation Overlord, the invasion of Normandy. The narrative often focuses on the overwhelming success of the Allied forces. However, the reality on the ground was far more brutal and resistant than many official accounts conveyed. Lieutenant William C. Smith, an artillery officer and forward observer, was tasked with an extraordinary mission: infiltrate Omaha Beach 2 hours before the main D-Day invasion on June 6, 1944. His transport was a rubber raft, described as an oversized truck inner tube with a thin rubber bottom, powered by a converted electric fan. His personal gear was sparse: a Colt .45 sidearm and extra clips. The pre-invasion Allied bombing campaign, intended to neutralize German defenses, was largely ineffective. German bunkers still had their lights on. The enemy soldiers, as Smith would later observe, were dry, well-fed, quite rested, and very well protected. The bombing had no effect whatsoever. This challenged the widespread notion that Allied air superiority had cleared the way for the landings. Smith's mission underscored the critical importance of effective communication and accurate artillery targeting for amphibious assaults. He established a makeshift hideout from concrete blocks, junk and cement rubble behind a key German anti-tank wall. From this precarious observation post, he began calling in naval gunfire. He pinpointed a German battery, likely 88S, firing on the USS Emmons and USS Arkansas. He directed the USS Arkansas's 12-inch guns to silence them. He then targeted a main German pillbox, a gun emplacement drilled into a cliff, and another 88mm gun emplacement. An unnamed destroyer's forward battery obliterated a pillbox on a nearby bluff. His precise directions neutralized key German defenses that the bombing had missed, significantly aiding the initial landing waves. Smith remained on the beach for 8 hours. From pre-dawn until almost noon, he witnessed the overwhelming human cost of D-Day, the brutal reality behind the Great Crusade. Post-war, Smith encountered skepticism about his claims from a retired Korean War general who doubted his being the first man ashore on Omaha Beach, based on official records. This highlights the importance of direct testimony against official records that may not capture all the nuances of frontline experience. Lieutenant Smith passed away on July 15, 2011, at age 93, his story a vital testament to individual courage against overwhelming odds. Back in the Mediterranean, Marty Romano and PT-306 continued their patrols. On June 29, 1944, off the northern coast of Elba, they encountered an Italian MAS 562 torpedo boat. The AMS boat was noted for having 2 engines, unlike the 3 in American PT boats, and an auxiliary engine on the same shaft. The enemy boat was captured, and Marty's crew participated in its recovery, a prize of enemy intelligence. In August 1944, the Allies prepared for Operation Dragoon, the invasion of southern France. Late on August 14, 1944, PT-306 departed Corsica. At 1:40 a.m. on August 15, Marty's boat landed 69 British commandos between Saint-Tropez and Cannes. It was a vital support role, underscoring the diverse capabilities of PT boats in amphibious operations. But even with Allied forces, danger was constant. During one mission, PT-36 came under fire from an American pilot. Lieutenant John Groegg, skipper of PT-36, quickly fired tracers at the American plane, preventing a friendly fire incident or fratricide. This demonstrated the high-stakes environment and the potential for misidentification, even among Allied forces. Later in September, Rouen 22 returned to Tunis for repairs and mandatory plague shots. They then settled into Antibes, France, before moving to Livorno, Italy, in November. Marty and his crew faced heavy-duty patrols through November and December 1944, operating in the Ligurian Sea. On December 27th, after 63 combat missions, Marty earned his eligibility for furlough. He departed, ORON-22, bound for home. Meanwhile, the air war over Europe and North Africa intensified. Floyd, Rod Mayer, born near Hector, Minnesota, had enlisted in the Army Air Cadet Program in February 1942. After 2 years at Augsburg College, Rod trained at Randolph Field, Texas. He had failed his first 2 flight check rides, a detail that challenges the myth of effortless military advancement. But he persevered, earning his wings in November 1942. His fighter training continued in Oakland, California, where he piloted the P-39 Airacobra. However, a critical strategic shift was about to occur. His troop carrier, bound for England, was diverted to North Africa, to Casablanca. Upon arrival at an airfield in Berechid, Morocco, Rod discovered British Spitfires, emblazoned with American roundels. His unit, the 308 Fighter Squadron, 31st Fighter Group, was swapping its P-39s and P-40s for the superior British aircraft. The P-39 was fundamentally inferior to enemy fighters. The Spitfire, with its air-pressure-operated pneumatics for firing guns and other systems, was a significant technological advantage, directly increasing pilot survivability. Rod and other American volunteers were trained by RAF officer Major Rusty Gates and issued RAF gear, helmets, life vests, parachutes, boots, and overalls. During one incident, Gates accidentally killed a camel driver on the runway with a landing wheel, a stark reminder of the cheapness of life in wartime. In July 1943, Rod flew his first combat missions during the invasion of Sicily. The 308th Fighter Squadron arrived in Sicily on D-Day +4. Rod's radio call sign was helpful. Dogfights were intense but brief, rarely lasting more than a minute or two. The Spitfire's ground line of sight was poor, requiring pilots to zigzag down the runway on takeoff. One day, his flight was fired upon by an American cruiser off the northern coast of Sicily, another reminder of the constant, multifaceted dangers. He once experienced a near-fatal jolt, discovering an 11 by 16-inch hole in his canopy. Fragments of a German shell had penetrated his leather helmet and scalp. It was a personal confrontation with the lethal reality of enemy fire. Rod yearned for an air-to-air victory. He achieved it in a one-on-one dogfight with a Focke-Wulf 190, outturning it at lower and medium altitudes, exploiting a known weakness of the 190 against the Mark V Spitfire. It was a personal triumph, shifting his perception from being targeted to becoming the aggressor. Later, his group transitioned to the P-51 Mustang. This represented a significant technological shift. The P-51 could fly for hours, compared to the Spitfire's hour or an hour and a half. It challenged the pilots' loyalty to their trusted Spitfires, but ultimately proved its superiority. After one mission, Rod experienced severe battle fatigue, a shaking knee that rendered him unable to walk. His P-51, with 2 exhaust pipes melted off, had not one drop of gas left, requiring him to taxi on fumes. He completed 130 missions, then an additional 30 sorties, totaling 160. His story highlights the physical and psychological toll of continuous combat. Meanwhile, on the ground in France, Jim Carroll, a paratrooper, had been inspired to enlist after seeing a movie. His jump school training involved 5 qualifying jumps from a C-47 at 1,300 feet. The static line, a 15-foot cord, attached to his parachute, deployed it upon extension. During one jump, the first jumper broke his leg with an audible snap and crack. On the transport to England, Jim experienced daily seasickness. For the Normandy invasion, the 101st Airborne's aerial strength included 490 planes, carrying over 6,600 paratroopers. The C-47, the workhorse of the Army, was central to this operation. Each paratrooper carried nearly 100 pounds of equipment. Jim was present for the iconic photograph with General Eisenhower, taken from their meeting. On the departure from England, under double daylight savings time, planes departed at 7-second intervals. Jim's combat jump was executed from a mere 500 feet, drastically reducing his exposure to anti-aircraft fire, but also increasing the disorientation upon landing. In the dark, paratroopers used a clicker for identification. One click answered by 2 clicks. He famously encountered cows, mistaking them for enemy forms in the darkness. His regiment's objective was to set up a roadblock near Carentanton to prevent German reinforcement of the beaches. Jim later fought at Bastogne in the Battle of the Bulge and was awarded the French Legion of Honor, a testament to his bravery and resilience. Now let us turn our attention to the other side of the world, to the vast and brutal expanse of the Pacific and Asia. The US strategy shifted to an island-hopping campaign, a grinding, bloody progression across the Pacific atolls. But first, we must acknowledge the early days of the war and the desperate struggles in the Philippines. Ken Porwall had joined the Minnesota National Guard, lured by the promise of a new uniform for the New Year's dance. The Guard was transitioning from M2 light tanks to M3 Stuarts, both thinly armored and with weak main guns. The Philippine Islands, an American Commonwealth since 1898, were protected by the United States Armed Forces, Far East, or USAFF. However, USAFV was chronically underfunded, subsisting on less than half the money and equipment needed for an adequate defense. They lacked spare parts, high-explosive tank ammunition, and even gasoline. Crucially, they had no extra ammunition for their M1 rifles. Guards ended their watch by passing their ammunition to the man replacing them. On the morning of December 8, 1941, Ken awoke to the news of Pearl Harbor. His tanks deployed around Clark Field. At about noon, a flight of planes appeared. They were Japanese. Ken, trapped in his tank, could not shoot at the incoming bombs, nor traverse his main gun high enough to engage the planes. In the ensuing chaos, Sergeant Jim McComas, a fellow tanker, inadvertently ran through a Japanese command post. A Japanese soldier tossed a thermite bomb onto his tank, burning a hole through the armor and into the engine compartment. With tanks disabled, the only recourse was to remove the back plates from the guns and hide them in the jungle, rendering the weapons unusable. As US forces retreated to Bataan, rations were cut to half. By February, they were cut again, with armed guards on the chow wagons. Malaria began to claim more men than enemy gunfire, with no quinine, no otobrine, no mosquito netting. Ken survived on one tin of sardines, shared with two friends. On April 9, 1942, after months of dwindling supplies and fierce fighting, the surrender on Bataan transitioned Ken from combatant to prisoner. He then endured the infamous Bataan Death March. Some 12,000 Americans and 67,000 Filipinos were forced into this treacherous hike. More than 7,000 would die along the way. Anyone who lagged behind that first day was shot. After the first day, they were bayoneted. Ken witnessed a Japanese lieutenant at the front of the column unhitch his sword and beat a lagging man with the scabbard until he rose. Money, watches, rings were taken. If a ring couldn't be removed, a finger was cut off. Jim McComas, Ken's friend, came down with malaria on the second day. Ken and his friends helped drag him along the road. The cruelty was extreme. Some Japanese peeled the skin from captives' feet and forced them to walk through piles of salt. Other prisoners were deliberately run over by Japanese trucks. The most frightening stories were those of eye gouging. Ken survived on nothing more than 2 handfuls of rice, 2 canteens of water, and a cup of tea. The POW camp at O'Donnell was a hellscape. More than 400 Americans were dying every day. Burial details went all day long. Latrines were hastily dug slit trenches, unsanitized, breeding flies. Japanese guards threw living POWs into graves to be buried alongside their dead friends. The rice was boiled to a consistency of oatmeal, called lagar. Ken suffered from yellow jaundice. A mysterious 1-pound bag of sugar with a note, "Take 3 spoons each day. It will help with your yellow jaundice," was left by a well. It was a glimmer of human kindness amidst the brutality. Later, on a work detail in mainland Japan, Ken was attacked by guards, bashed with rifle butts across his neck, and back tumbled into a ditch, unconscious. The cargo holds for transport were so crowded, there was hardly room to sit. The toilet was a washtub, in the middle of the hold. Men lived like rats in a sewer, awash in human feces. Each man got a dipper of rice. They were hungry, starved, crazy, out of their minds. Ken suffered tuberculosis of the spine in 3 vertebrae, a lasting wound from his ordeal. Moving further east, another grueling campaign unfolded in the China-Burma-India Theatre, the CBI, often called the Forgotten Battlefront. There were no infantry divisions here, only detachments and special units. Denzel Alexander had wanted to be a pilot, but was rejected from the Air Force for being 5 pounds underweight. He narrowly missed the physical fitness cutoff date for pilot training. Instead, he was assigned to the CBI theatre. After a journey on the USS Anderson, traversing the Panama Canal to Australia and then Bombay, Denzel faced the hazards of the Burmese jungle. Vines resembled snakes, and leeches clung to pants and leggings, squirming for blood. One day, Denzel encountered a cobra, as thick as a human arm, spitting from a fallen tree. He shot it with his M1 rifle. That night, in his tent, in the cloudy pitch-black darkness, he mistook his own left arm for a cobra in his cot, a testament to the psychological toll of the jungle. He fabricated a dream to avoid being labeled the Snake Man by his comrades. A critical supply route in this theatre was flying the Hump, the dangerous flight path for Allied cargo planes over the Himalayas into China. It became known as the Aluminum Graveyard due to the heavy aircraft losses. In one harrowing incident, a cargo plane scraped canyon walls, tearing a 6-foot-wide hole along its bottom. The pilot, facing a certain crash, had 5 of the heaviest crewmen, weighing close to half a ton, bail out to lighten the plane, a desperate measure for survival. The fate of that pilot remained a mystery for years, only resolved by chance. Denzel also worked on the Ledo Road, built to link up with the old Burma Road. Japanese spies were a constant threat, attempting to sabotage newly finished bridges. Machine guns were set up on both sides of the river, hidden in the jungle, for defense. The war also relied on clandestine operations. Bob Maynard, an Ivy League student and baseball player at Princeton, was recruited into the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS. Major Wiener, his interrogator, looked for specific traits: autonomy and innovation. OSS training was unconventional, psychological training in unmarked fatigues, using false names and backgrounds. Physical evaluations were held in a former congressional country club. General Bill Donovan, Wild Bill, a Medal of Honor recipient and legendary OSS leader, championed this new form of intelligence. OSS units were formed ad hoc from a pool of specialists, even former Alcatraz inmates, for forgery. Bob's journey was a slow boat to China, via Australia to Calcutta. His assignment was OSS Detachment 202 in Kunming, China, a primary hub for flights over the Hump. He worked under Colonel Richard Hepner, an artilleryman and fellow Princeton baseball player. Information was strictly compartmentalized, on a need-to-know basis. The espionage in China was complex, involving spying amongst allies, Chiang Kai-shek, Mao Zedong, the British, and the French. Donovan, on a personal visit to China, highlighted the strategic importance of the CBI theatre. His briefcase, carried even during a flood, contained critical data on POW rescue and the atomic bomb. In the secret war room, another notable figure was present: Paul Cushing Child, an OSS agent, and his wife, Julia McWilliams, later known as Julia Child. Julia, a towering 6'2", was an OSS operative at the Kunming station, meticulously cataloguing classified data. Her pre-culinary fame contribution to intelligence showcases the diverse backgrounds of individuals drawn into the war effort. In the Pacific, the island-hopping campaign continued its relentless advance. The strategic imperative of securing atolls, like Eniwetok, necessitated extremely dangerous reconnaissance and demolition missions. David Gould, a Navy combat diver, or frogman, found himself voluntold for this specialized service. Frogmen received specialized training at underwater demolitions, UD, school. Each diver carried a cyanide capsule, a grim assurance of a quick and painless death if captured, to prevent interrogation. Eniwetok was a menacing atoll, heavily fortified by the Japanese with pillboxes, gun pits, and extensive minefields. It presented a formidable threat to the Allied landing force. Dave Gould's role was critical. 6 weeks before the invasion, he conducted his first reconnaissance mission, identifying Japanese fortifications and reef trafficability. On one such pre-dawn mission, he encountered 2 Japanese sentries on the beach. He quickly submerged, avoiding capture and torture. 4 weeks later, Gould returned for a sabotage mission. He taped TNT to sea mines, ready to set off a blast on contact, and disabled metal boat traps and tripwires. His work directly created a way open for the landing craft of the assault force. On the eve of the invasion, Dave prepped his last offshore demolitions and reconnoitered inland outposts. D-Day was tomorrow morning. Within a few hours, a vast fleet of American warships opened fire, their thundering guns pulverizing the atoll. The pre-dawn naval bombardment was devastating, but it did not eliminate all Japanese resistance. At 3 a.m., Gould began his return, meeting his pickup boat, a PT boat, with a rambling Packard engine. At dawn on D-Day, Dave Gould activated his preset demolitions. A boiling wall of water, coral fragments, and flying metal erupted. He had cleared the way for the landing craft. As the Marine infantrymen came ashore, Dave guided them under fire to secure the beachhead. Japanese defenders, described as crawling with soldiers, were determined to resist. They used pillboxes, gun pits, with long barrels jutting over and machine gun emplacements. Amidst the chaos, a Japanese Banzai charge erupted, a horde of soldiers rushing the newly established beachhead. Dave found himself positioned with a two-man machine gun team, their belt-fed weapons spitting fire, the barrel overheated, requiring swift replacement. The survival of that machine gun team, under Dave's guidance, was crucial in repelling the charge. Gould was later hit. He regained consciousness 2 days later, the corpsman having saved his life. His intelligence gathering and demolition work minimized immediate casualties for the initial wave of Marines. Dave Gould continued his service in subsequent campaigns, his actions underscoring the vital, unseen contributions of specialized underwater combat units to the success of the island-hopping campaign. The war in the Pacific would continue its grinding, brutal course. By the summer of 1945, the Japanese were fighting their last battle on Okinawa. American forces, including Marty Romano's USS Oyster Bay, a PT boat tender converted from an LST, were being refitted for the invasion of Japan. Both sides were expecting a bloodbath. Some Japanese civilians were digging trenches along the beaches of Honshu, while others were being issued pitchforks to attack incoming paratroopers. Then, the world changed forever. Days later, the US dropped its first atomic weapons over the Empire of Japan. Following the nuclear devastation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the Japanese government lost its will to fight. Marty Romano felt that the nuclear attacks ultimately saved more lives than they took. He was honorably discharged on January 12, 1946. Under the terms of the newly created GI Bill, he enrolled at the Clarkson College of Technology, graduating with a Bachelor of Science degree in 1952. His skills as a civil engineer would shape Minnesota's infrastructure, contributing to projects like the Lowry Hill Tunnel, the 11th Street South Bridge, the Portland Avenue Tunnel in Minneapolis, and the Richard IV Bond Memorial Bridge connecting Duluth to Superior. But for others, the war's end brought not an immediate peace, but a continuation of suffering. For Ken Porwall, in his POW camp in Japan, the atomic bombs brought an unexpected silence. Japanese guards abandoned the camps. Ken was liberated, but the ordeal was far from over. He spent nearly a year in the hospital, getting spinal fusions for tuberculosis in 3 vertebrae. Governor Harold Stassen of Minnesota coordinated the release of Minnesota National Guardsmen like Ken. In 1953, Ken married Mary Ellen, and they had 9 children. He volunteered over 5,000 hours at the Minneapolis VA hospital, a lifetime dedicated to service and healing. He passed away on Veterans Day 2013, at age 93. Ken's lifelong struggle with forgiveness highlights the enduring psychological toll of captivity and trauma. Ed Wentzlaff, the survivor of the USS Arizona, remained on active duty for another 4.5 years after Pearl Harbor. He had a temporary stint on the USS Yorktown before its sinking at Midway. By war's end, he became a chief warrant officer. After the war, he attended law school at the University of Minnesota, later farming for 38 years. He served as mayor of Butterfield, Minnesota, and Wautuan County Commissioner. Ed reflected on the USS Indianapolis sinking as the last ship that was sunk, a testament to the enduring memory of wartime losses. He visited the USS Arizona Memorial at least 8 times. Ed passed away on September 11, 2013. At 96 years old, his ashes were interred aboard the USS Arizona on December 7, 2013, rejoining his comrades. His life dedicated to remembrance and education signifies the importance of bearing witness to history. For Floyd Rod Meyer, the pilot who completed 160 missions, the war ended. He went on to a career as a senior manager at Whirlpool Corporation. His story, and those of countless others, reveal the profound impact of war on individuals' post-war lives, influencing their career choices and their willingness to discuss their experiences. These stories, from the beaches of Normandy to the jungles of Burma, from the decks of PT boats to the confines of POW camps, are the indelible legacy of a generation. They reveal the courage and adaptability of ordinary individuals whose extraordinary actions, often against overwhelming odds and flawed intelligence, ultimately contributed to Allied victory. The ongoing legacy of this greatest generation reminds us that their stories, rapidly disappearing, must be preserved. They offer not just a chronicle of events, but profound insight into the human spirit and the enduring costs of conflict.